is something that you're going to see when you head to the pump. When you're trying to fill your tank, you're going to notice those prices are up again. Gas prices increased again over the last few days. Now it looks like more than 50 cents a gallon more than where we were just a week ago. Joining us to talk about this, Matt McLean, GasBuddy. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Matt. We had you on at the early portion of last week. That was before we kind of started some changes. What are you all kind of seeing now in these trends that the conflict has reached well over a week?
Well, with the national average up again, as you mentioned, 51 cents a gallon to $3.45, I wish I had better news. The problem is that it is not going to stop. We're looking at a potential 20 to 50 cents per gallon this week. With the
and you
price
just said there, wow. Go ahead, Go ahead.
I was just going to say the 20 to 50 cents more per gallon this week. It is certainly a possibility, more of a probability. I wish that were even the worst news. The actual worst news, diesel prices rising 85.9 cents in the last week, and nationwide diesel prices may rise an additional 35 to 75 cents per gallon. That is going to create a problem, not just obviously at the pump for each and every one of us, but when you have such a dramatic increase in diesel prices, that's how all of our goods are shipped to local stores. Everything from produce to unfrozen meats, never frozen meats, as well as dairy products. Those are the things you'll start seeing potentially the extra shipping costs beginning to become factored into that price point you pay on the grocery store shelf. So unfortunately for all of us, that is going to be a sincere problem going forward, not just in how much we are personally paying at the pump, but having a trickle effect, if you will, as we go throughout other aspects.
And just doing the quick math there for an additional 20 or so cents there outside of diesel. So you're talking about for those who are just every day pumping gas, at least about 70 cents that we're looking at here in the very near future. More.
That is correct. And that is our analysis based on what has already happened in the conflict. So we feel fairly secure about that. Now, as you mentioned, we talked earlier last week. On Monday, we had an initial forecast, and that seems like an eternity ago, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was 10 to 30 cents per gallon for gasoline on our Monday forecast. On Tuesday, we added an additional 10 to 25 cents per gallon on top of Monday's forecast, so in addition to, and then I think on Thursday of last week, we revised that forecast even further upward compared to where we were at on Monday and Tuesday. So I hope that is not the case this week, but it is also, it's not a guarantee either. We are looking at prices continuing to increase. I want to also throw out, we're not going to have a supply issue. That is not in the cards for America. In fact, we export oil. We've got plenty of oil. We are having a price issue, and that's because oil is traded on the global scale, utilizing U.S. dollars as its currency exchange, but it's far deeper than that. It's just that the oil market itself is a global market, and so when we have a 20% supply disruption, courtesy of the Strait of Hormuz effectively being closed, everyone is going to be paying the price. By the way, folks in Asia, for example, they are having and will have a supply issue as a result of Middle Eastern oil being effectively cut off.
And I'm so glad that you broke it down that way for people. And I got to ask this. Is there any type of precedent in your time there with GasBuddy and that you guys can think of when we have a situation like this and the longer that it kind of draws out, that the predictions keep changing? And what did we see, if so?
Typically, we really are fairly good at saying, here's what's going to happen 7 days from now, and the dart will usually hit very close to the bullseye. When we have an ongoing conflict that is highly unpredictable, that's where we start running into a problem. So we kind of flip it on its head and do an immediate post-analysis of everything that has already taken place in the conflict that we feel will have a direct impact on oil prices. And no one, not a single human being on Earth, knows where the next missile is going to land in order to know exactly how it's going to be extrapolated into the price point of what we're going to be paying at our local gas stations. So we have to look at this with reality in that we just don't know until we know what happens going forward. I do think, however, it seems fairly safe to assume the conflict remains ongoing, and it is more likely than not it will continue on into this week, possibly a lot longer than that, depending upon who you speak to.
And I would say you guys at GasBuddy have always been phenomenal, Matt, as well, in what you guys do. We depend on you so much for these predictions. You mentioned the Strait of Hormuz. Let's get back to that really quickly for our viewers here. Can you, again, kind of break down why that is so important when we're talking about this particular conflict and what we're seeing at the pump?
Yeah, the Strait of Hormuz, at its most narrow point, is roughly 20 to 21 miles wide. It borders multiple Middle Eastern countries that are members of OPEC or OPEC Plus. And because of not just saber rattling this time with Iran, but a direct threat and even acting on that threat a handful of times over the last week, that has effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is responsible for transporting 20% of the global oil supply on a daily basis. What that means, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, any other country that borders the Strait of Hormuz is now unable to get their oil supply out. That has caused multiple nations to ramp down oil production because they are out of local storage. So once this ends, this conflict, and once we can get things back to a state of normalcy, we will take a while longer in order to reposition tankers, get them to the ports, ramp oil production back up because they had to ramp it down, and it will take a good while to simply unwind this price increase once the conflict is over, provided that there's nothing major that takes place that could hinder oil production even further in these neighboring states from missiles and or potentially drones from Iran.
And that's on top of, isn't it around this type of year we typically see some form of increase anyway with the time of year, the switch between the type of the oil that is used as well? I'll let you say that better than me, but don't we typically see some changes this time of year anyway?
Yeah, I am normally a glasses half full, all smiles kind of guy on a daily basis. And most of my friends chide me on that because I do try to remain in the best mood possible. But I was also a news anchor and a field reporter for 27 years, and this is not the time to smile. We have some serious road ahead of us, unfortunately, and possibly some additional bumps in the road. And exactly what you talked about. The summer blend of gasoline is something that America will be slowly switching, or not is, but is currently switching over to gradually as temperatures rise from south to north. That is a more expensive product to refine. It carries additional ingredients to help with air pollution. In other words, reduces or helps eliminate the smog in urban areas. So yeah, that we are still working through in the springtime. Normally we kind of maximize that price point somewhere around Memorial Day weekend and plateau through the summer, and then prices slowly fall as we move toward fall, as autumn. But in true reality, I am looking at this conflict where it's kind of thrown a hiccup into a lot of different ways that we view things when it comes to gas prices, and kind of turned everybody on their heels a little bit to making sure that we get it right.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time this morning and breaking all that down. I mean, we knew that there was going to be an impact. You guys broke that down for us for sure. But to see, as you said, the uncertainty that's happened there and what we're seeing right now in the pump, I'm sure we're going to be coming back to you probably next week if it continues to linger into that. Matt, as always, thank you so much for your time.
Sure thing.